Well, welcome everyone. My name is Julie. I'm the events manager at Roundabout Books, and we are so excited that you're joining us tonight to talk about Melissa's book, Call Me Elizabeth Lark. I literally finished the audiobook about 3 minutes before we started the Zoom. And I want to remind everyone that if you are an audiobook fan and you don't want to give your money to those other people, if you sign up with Libro FM, you can pick the indie bookstore that you want your purchase to credit. So all you have to do is type in Roundabout Books when you create your account, and anytime you buy an audiobook from them, Roundabout Books gets the sale. So there's my plug for that because I love audiobooks.
Nice. That's awesome.
So tonight we are joined by two authors. We're going to do a little in conversation. So first I'm going to introduce Eliza, who is going to be talking with Melissa. So Eliza, raised in the Detroit suburbs, now lives with her cat in Washington, D.C. She is a member of Bethesda Writers Center, as well as the Metro Writers, a weekly critique group that meets in DuPont Circle. That sounds fun. Her book, All That's Bright and Gone, just came out in paperback. So check with the store about getting your copy of that. I love that cover. Now that I look at it, I feel like I have seen it. So I think we may have had it before.
Big seller, I'm sure.
So our featured author tonight, Melissa Colasanti, is a mother, a BFA student, and an author. Her writing has appeared in LitHub, Memoir Magazine, the Coffin Bell Journal, and others. She is a member of ITW and was awarded the Stephen R. Kustra Fellowship for Creative Writing in 2019 and the Glenn Balk Award for Fiction in 2020. This is her debut thriller, Call Me Elizabeth Lark. So ladies, I am going to turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you, Julie.
Would be remiss if we didn't put in a plug for the store and tell people to check out your online selection if you're not in Oregon yourselves. And thank you for supporting authors the way you do. We appreciate it.
We appreciate it so much. Thank you so much, Julie, for having us.
Yeah, I'm
so excited to be virtually in Oregon tonight. I feel it. I feel the water. I don't exactly know where you're located, but I assume it's by water. I know the book is by water. So that's actually my first question for you, Melissa. The setting of the book is Oregon coast, and I wondered if you could share any of your own experiences or what made you decide to set the book in that location.
Okay, so originally I'm from Los Angeles, and when I was 30, right when my kids were little tiny toddlers, my older kids, my husband had just died, and I decided I wanted to move, and the Pacific Northwest was where I wanted to go. And we ended up going to Washington by the coast there in the Puget Sound, but kind of traveled back and forth. And in the novel, the inn, the Barkley Inn, is located in a little coastal town in Tillamook. It's about, like we were talking about, 4 or 5 hours from Bend, where Roundabout is. It's a little more inland, but I love the little coastal towns, and especially this one little bayside town. I just had this, I don't know, just like a feeling that it was the perfect place for this kind of claustrophobic kind of inn where something could happen.
I love that. And Julie, can I put you on the spot? Did you recognize any of the locations, or did you feel like you were reading about an area you'd been to?
Oh, absolutely. I'm lucky enough to have some relatives who have second homes on the coast.
That is lucky.
We have one at the inn at Otter Rock, which is Otter Crest, and then a friend has one in on Nehalem Bay, which is not too far, like north of Tillamook, but south of Seaside and Cannon. So as soon as they're talking about like the wind whipping and what's that hitting, it's a branch hitting the house because the wind on the coast is crazy. I love that for a setting though. The Oregon coast is perfectly creepy and lovely at the same time.
It is. It's like, to me, it's haunting, yet it's so beautiful. And I thought if I was going to run away, now I didn't have completely, obviously, Elizabeth's situation, but if I
Hope
was going to
not.
run away, thank God, right? But if I was going to run away, that would be the way I would go. If I was
Yeah.
stuck, especially in this isolated, cold, frigid cabin, which was the Washington setting. So, yes.
Oh, also familiar to you, a place that you had been and spent time.
That particular area up Mount Rainier, I needed something extremely isolated. I'm a little more familiar with the Seattle area, but it's not a far drive to anywhere there. You can go to the ocean, you can go up mountains. So it's a really cool area there too. However, that right there where I set that, like in the middle of like this Mount Rainier kind of area, is not a place I would want to live. Extremely isolated to an extent that would be a bit much for me.
Yeah, and reflected in the plot. So, Call Me Elizabeth Lark is a book about a woman who leads a double life in some ways. And I was thinking about that. I mean, is that a theme of other works that you've worked on, or is that plotline of particular interest to you for a reason? Do you return to it?
That's an interesting question. This is the only one. Oh, Ed has a question, but
Oh, Ed, we'll get you later, Ed, for heaven's sakes.
okay, so that's an interesting question because this is the first novel that I've written where there's a complete double life going on, where this woman, I didn't want her to be like purposefully, I'm going to become an imposter and go ruin these people's lives. It was more just like terrible circumstances. She gets, and this is pretty early, revealed pretty
Yeah,
early.
no spoilers. We talked
No
about that before we
spoilers.
started.
Super early in the book where, she just like stops by. It's her hometown and she gets mistaken for this girl who's missing. And it's like, on the one hand, she feels incredibly guilty to like make everything worse for them. But at the same time, she's just getting caught back and forth in her own lie. It's like, well, this is better for me and my son because otherwise we'd be on the run and with no money and everything else. And yet, and they love us, she's never had that. And then at the same time, it's like, oh my gosh, we're making everything worse for, Myra and their family, especially when all her problems end up following her there. But as far as like having written in this particular thing in other books, no, but I do love secrets, family secrets, all that stuff. I mean, I absolutely love it when people are kind of hiding something. It creates some tension there, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I was thinking, are there any themes that I turn back to? And I would say for myself, I'm not sure. I probably try to avoid doing that. If I've talked about something a lot in another work, I'll say, I already did a thing with the mom. Let's do a totally different direction this time. But yeah, secrets, anything that one character is trying to hide from another, but that's just good craft, I think. I'm not sure.
I think that's kind of a suspense thing anyway.
Yeah.
Like, Call Me Elizabeth Lark there's a large family drama aspect to it, so it's kind of hard to pin it just in the mystery genre because it's character driven. But I think that you have to have some kind of,
Yeah,
hidden.
it's very effective here, I think. It works for this story for sure.
Thank you.
So you have so many twists and turns in this book, and I was even glancing over at like how other people were reacting to it on Goodreads, and that's something that so many people said is, oh, there's amazing twists and turns in this book. It's hard to put it down. There's different things, plot didn't see it coming, did see it coming, liked this one. So do you start with all those twists and turns in mind already when you start writing, or are you ever surprised by them as you go? How does it work for you when you write something like this?
Okay, so in this book, I really didn't have it all. I mean, I always do that, I try to plot something out. First, I always start with my characters and getting to know them and stuff and realize who they are, and then I put them in the situation. But I always plan out, I begin to anyway. I think I'm going to plan out, this is going to be this twist, or this is going to be what this ends up. And then like halfway through, it changes. And
yeah, throw it all out.
which is really hard when you have this web of the kind of things you need in a mystery. It's so everything is connected to another. So then you're like unraveling the whole thing. And so my next book, I tried to do a little bit better at that by not waiting till I finished the whole book to go back and detangle it. I would kind of get to, 75 pages, realize something, and then plot out the whole thing and then go back. Not just because this was so challenging. I think I can't even tell you how many drafts this went through. It was incredibly, a lot. What about you?
Yeah.
Do you like plan out? Because you had one in there that was pretty shocking at the end.
I was thinking about yours as well. No spoilers, but there's at least one giant twist in yours towards the end that is important. And I wondered, did she start the whole thing with that in mind? Now, in my case, I did. I knew that one fact before I started writing. The big twist in the end of my book, I did know that, and I don't honestly know how I could have written the whole book otherwise, because without getting into a whole bunch of stuff, like, it would really not make any sense, and nothing that happens would make any sense if you didn't already know that one thing. But with yours,
your
biggest one,
thing, like the really big thing, I did know that, but I had sort of had a different way of working with the antagonist that ends up being the antagonist than happened. Like my initial person who doesn't make it to act 2 and 3 actually dead in my first several drafts, but then my editor was intent that we needed a new thing, and she was right. For sure, these editors, they're right, but they make us do a lot of work.
Always for the best.
Yes, for sure.
It's funny, I would say the same thing. I always have the biggest twist in mind, but all the other ones are up for grabs. And I find that what I've done most lately is I write the first half by outline, and then I stop. And I maybe put it aside for a little bit, or maybe not that long, but then I throw out the outline and say, okay, out of what do I have here? What's the new second half from these threads? What am I interested in? What am I not interested in? What can I cut later? I think that's my process now, but I still need the outline to get to that first half, or else I think I would just muddle around. I don't know what I would do. It would take forever.
Well, I can't now, in working on my 3rd book, my agent is pretty much like, I want like a 6 to 8 page synopsis. So I have a lot. I mean, we know that once we get into publishing, we have a lot more. There's more interest in like what actually is going to happen in this book before you take all this time and write it,
And it's
so
faster too. The deadline moves up so fast. I mean, you have your whole life to write your first book, and then your second book, you might have a year. You gotta start accelerating.
You're like, for sure.
Well, I think it's in mystery too. Both of us are writing mystery / suspense, even though they're character driven and somewhat literary, both of them. In mystery, you really have to have those plot points. I think there's more opportunity to really explore and be experimental in some other genres that are really dependent on the character and the relationships. But I got a murder to solve. I got clues to spread. The clues need to end up to the answer. It's just very difficult to do that, feeling your way through it.
In my next thing, which I can't tell too much about because I haven't found a home for it yet.
Classic publishing, can't talk about it.
Right? It's all secret, but it's more of a mystery to be solved by the main character. It's a dual timeline, and the main character is a detective, and the other timeline is her girlfriend from high school, who they end up finding her body. And of course, that was her first love and everything, but she's the detective, so she's solving this case. In her timeline, it's very specific what she has to do to unravel clues and this and that and the other, versus being chased by
I think it's Lisa Gardner Someday I'm going to run into her again and she's going to kill me for misquoting her, but I think it's her who always says that she really does not know who the murderer is herself. You know, she writes these amazing suspense thrillers, and if it's her, says that in the end she truly is unsure. You know, it might be Lisa Jackson. Sorry, Lisas of the world who write suspense, but I think you can do that more easily in a suspense where it is a lot of running, hiding. You know, a lot of the action is about escaping or surviving, versus a procedural driven type of work where it's about putting clues together. You'd have to
get those.
Yeah, you'd have to know what the clues are, I think, although I'm sure people can do it. If I've learned anything, it's that everybody writes books totally different ways and it works very differently. There's no one way, I think, to be effective.
Well, this one, I just kept kind of going back and forth. Like I said, I get to like, I don't know, a quarter of the way through and something clicks in my mind where it's going to change, where I think I need to change it. But this time I was like, I am not going to revise this to the extent that I did the last one. So I'm just going to stop right here, back up, not just keep on flying with all the problems.
I do have less patience with a really messy draft than I once did. I think once I was willing to sit with it, and now I'm like, no, it's got to be a little cleaner on the first run. I just can't. I can't do it again.
Yeah.
So speaking of publishing, Melissa and I know each other because we're in the same debut group. We're both recently debut authors, within the last few years. And so I feel like a lot of the people who come to these groups want to talk about the sort of business side of writing a little bit. We have a lot of probably other aspiring or published authors in the audience today. So I wanted to ask you, what in this process of writing and selling your first book has sort of been the biggest surprise? It could be good or bad, whatever you feel like is the most interesting.
So many things were just surprising. My favorite part, this is so almost, I try to stay with the core of it, which was for me, since I was maybe 5, I just wanted to see my book on a bookshelf. And it was really, it came from reading, like a love of reading. And I was just like, I want to do that someday. But it was a very like pure and non-businessy, like, I want to be a bestseller, or I want to, do this, that, and the other that's so businessy. And I'm just like, all of us, I think we tend to start like with this little pure like joyous thing and then start moving into, well, we need the next thing and the next and the next, what comes next. So I keep like driving my focus back to what the core of writing is for me. So I'm really trying.
So have you found it? What is that?
For me, it is just storytelling, and getting to know these strangers who aren't real, but to me they become that way, as like Aoife, is that how we pronounce her name? Did I get it right?
We'll never know. It's not. Yes, my character has a strange name. It's spelled Aoife and it's pronounced Aoife, which is a plot point, so everybody hesitates before they mention her.
Yes, exactly.
So I'm a sadistic author, is why I'm a sadist. That's why I wrote it that way. Sorry, Melissa, continue.
I was just I was just commenting on her name because I keep thinking, oh my gosh, I know it's not it. Yeah, so I got it right this time.
You did a great job.
Thanks. But yeah, no, I really want to not start getting too focused on like future type stuff and just kind of be in the moment with writing, because otherwise, you'll be writing and not able to do that first draft just for you. And of course, we're going to revise for, this readers, but we can't get our heart out there if we don't start for the story we want to read, So there's that. And then the second thing that is actually more of like a publishing thing that we were just talking about a minute ago is having to do more on the like synopses and pitches and thinking of it in a more commercial way. It's all been fun, but completely different than what, anybody has ever, done before, I would think. It's just,
it's its own art. And it is really interesting though. Like I think there's some things about that world that have made me a better writer. I think it makes some of my ideas better, or at least helps me pick better ideas, like log lines, synopses, pitches. all that type of stuff, which when you're an author of long novels, a one tweet worthy sentence is the opposite of what you're thinking about sometimes. But there's value to that, I think, and it is a different brain that you have to put in your head.
Well, there's so much value to being able to do a premise that you can talk about so quick, like in the one sentence, because that is what, that's what sells, that's what works. And it's harder to think that way until you kind of get into it. But I do think that I learned the most as an author by having an editor and working through an edit letter and doing that giant revision. Like, it just, yeah, it really does increase your ability to understand, like, okay, we're gonna have to actually revise this, not just put another coat of paint on what we already have, but absolutely
Dig deep.
deconstruct it. And it's good to be walked through that.
Yeah. People who are in that world are so knowledgeable. I mean, it's funny. I think from the outside, you think the author really drives the train. And then when you get into the publishing world, the author's like the lowest peon of internship, like who cares what we think or need? Like, we are the least of the least. There's a billion more of us, anytime anyone needs one. At least that's how it certainly feels. The editors are so grounded in what is out there right now in the market and what people are buying and what people are interested in. And Julie, to pull you back in again, whether you want to be or not, I hear that a lot about booksellers too. I mean, people say, if you want to know what readers are looking for, that conversation is with booksellers and asking them, what cover does a person pick up? What idea interests them? How do you make recommendations? If you want to say anything about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we notice the trends just like everybody else does. I actually have a master's degree in publishing, and
Wow.
I was going to school right at the time that Anthony Doerr put out All the Light We Cannot See and The Nightingale, and every single cover was blue with the Eiffel Tower on it. And so now people get confused. They're like, there was a blue book with an Eiffel Tower. Do you want Kristen Hanna's The Nightingale? Do you want that? But the other thing that I really like, because I'm involved with the Central Oregon Writers Guild here in Bend, is that you do kind of have to get to know just your local bookstore if you want to sell your book. Even if you are going to self-publish and you want somebody to carry your book, you have to come and talk to me. You know what I mean? Like, because we know what sells in our area and what doesn't. And that can change. I'm amazed to understand what sells in different demographics.
Right. So do you think this is kind of like that your specific bookstore might have maybe a different, I don't know, like a different taste than maybe one in just like a different area, like even relatively close by? Or do you think it's kind of more universal?
I think we still sell a lot of those books that are going to be like something everybody wants to read.
Right.
We did The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue for book club this month, and I think that that's a book that kind of speaks to everybody. But I also note that our store sells a lot of historical and nonfiction. I think we have a lot of people who really want to read about something that is someone's life story, the history of this thing that happened. And I like that kind of stuff too. Like I gravitate towards memoirs. And so whenever someone comes in like that, they're like, I want a memoir. I'm like, I can help you.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
Let me take you to my special shelves.
Yeah, I think, like our store, we don't get a whole lot of requests for, like your traditional romance novel.
Yeah.
But, we have a lot of like regular fiction and historical fiction that has that romance aspect.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily the bodice rippers that, maybe people are
buying those online is why. They don't want to walk into your store and be like, hello.
I think I was going to say that, Eliza. I think that genre is one that actually does really well online. And probably the self-published is hard to sell, but I think that one, genre there actually does do decent. If you write that, you could.
What? I think
Yeah.
there's niche genres that probably do better online than they would with a publisher. I'm thinking like LGBTQ romance. Like that's a specific market, and I'm not sure that the average Penguin marketing person knows necessarily how to find those readers the same way that some online options do. Now, I hope they're using online options that still go to Roundabout Books. Don't get me wrong. I hope they're on bookstore.org and they're picking your bookstore as their, purchase. But I suspect they're not walking into a store to buy that bodice ripper in the same way that maybe they used to have to do, because those used to be sold at like the counter, right, at like supermarkets, the trade
There
paperbacks.
still is. I worked at the Bend Barnes and Noble in the early 2000s for about 5 years. And so that was like, I would say the height of like the mass market, that side,
Yeah.
the mysteries that come out in a series, A for Alibi, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What I am really liking is books that are so, and I do think that this book is that are so standalone that
Mhm.
they are like, I wouldn't put this in your traditional like series mystery. It's
Mm-mm.
very
It's not
like,
going to be.
right, exactly. But it's
So this is like, I will kill anyone who tries to make me write another one of these.
I don't know how you would, given the ending and everything.
Yeah, the ending.
Oh, yeah. But I like that your characters felt like I knew their arc. There wasn't a leftover, like, let's see what else happens.
Right.
It's very much like, oh, I watched this person grow and change and accept some bad things and then good things. And then, it was very rounded.
Mm-hmm.
You.
Yeah. Well, do we want to open up for some questions from our?
Yeah, I think we're like halfway, so we should let the audience jump in if they wish to. Or if not, I will keep talking until someone stops me.
So if you're familiar with the Zoom function where you can say raise a hand, I can always let you ask your question out loud. If you'd rather put it in the chat, then I will read it. And let's go ahead and start with the question that is in the chat right now from Ed. I'll just read it out. How much research did you do in victim escape resources and PTSD/trauma, and was it difficult to conduct?
Ed, calling you out.
I did a lot of research into the victim escape routes and things like that, even though hers went terribly wrong. But I did like a lot of research on that. And also there's a couple of several Facebook groups where you can learn about law enforcement type things, legal fiction, or legal, like there's lawyers who'll actually answer questions, make sure that you kind of don't massively massacre like a law, courtroom type of thing. But there were some things there. PTSD is something though that I'm incredibly personally familiar with, and that I've personally battled. So my goal with and not in the domestic violence space, but with her, with Myra, and even with Gwen, Elizabeth, Gwen, and Myra all have forms of PTSD, whether that's from, losing a child, from literally having lost a sister, or from, this horrifically abusive relationship. I felt like, well, there was a couple things that I wanted to do there. One was I was not going to exploit that space. I did not want that to be extremely graphic, or, I mean, there's some of that, but it's not really what the story's about. I wanted it to be about these three women and their experiences and becoming strong and surviving. But I also did not want to focus much on the antagonist. I think it's probably a little obvious that the husband barely has a role in this, and that's by choice. Like, I did not do that because I was telling instead of
Didn't have
showing.
time to get to it. Yeah, that's what happened.
Yeah,
Just
I
ran out of
literally
time.
did not want to. That was like a
Yeah.
conscious choice. Like, I am not going to show this man for more than a couple chapters. I mean,
Yeah,
was,
that's so funny, Melissa, because I get that note all the time. I always get the note, your male characters are not very developed. And I'm like, yeah, I feel like we've had many generations of well-developed male characters.
right. And
We're
honestly,
good.
like,
This one's just the stock husband, because I'm not talking about him. He's not the point. I have a lot of ex-boyfriends who pop in and out of the story, but like they're not really what it's about. And it's, yeah, they're a little bit stock because I'm not that interested in them.
well, it was
How
interesting
terrible is
about
that?
that's why you just make the male character who's doing really, really bad stuff, you just make them a psychopath. So there's nothing to
Nothing
really
to tell.
So that was kind of my goal there. And I have had some women actually reach out and say that they like the way that I portrayed that, because I felt like it needed a soft hand, and I felt like it needed to be more focused on the emotional aspect of it. And also Elizabeth in particular, with her the way that she reacts to trauma in the world around her is super, because that's how it is, but at the same time I wasn't going to have him there.
Yeah. It's funny. I sometimes feel a little stuck because I would like to write sort of on the thriller spectrum, but I don't like to write things that are graphic, or I don't like to read that type of stuff, and I don't want to write that type of stuff. And I've had that conversation with my agent and with editors that's like, look, I'm trying to write a more gentle mystery. And they're like, oh, like a cozy, like with a cat. And I'm like, no, it's not like Miss Pris's, not that there's anything wrong with cat mysteries. I would be a fan, but like, it's just, I'm not trying to center violence. I don't want violence on screen. I don't want rape and murder to be the center. Like, I was thinking, I don't think I've ever written a book where the murder occurs on screen. It's already over, but usually before the book, and the book is about the fallout and resolving it and, the justice or whatever, but rarely the actual murder, because I don't really like to read that stuff. I read those books, I flip through those parts real fast. I'm just a soft lady.
Somebody actually wanted to know, and I just didn't care, her perspective was like, why weren't we shown what happened to this victim? And I'm like, no, if you know what I'm talking about.
Such a fine line to being exploitative. I mean, it just so quickly becomes like, who's the gaze here, and who's the object and the subject. And I'm sure people can do it wonderfully. I myself would not put that on stage either, because I just don't think that's what I want to write about.
It's just about choosing what you would want to read and then writing, to that. And some people do that wonderfully. And it's because, when they read that, they're very much like, oh, okay, I can, understand or feel this from a different perspective. For me, it's just, I feel like to me, I just want it to have a lighter touch to it. And I did want her to have this background because I could explore that emotionally with her. But at the same time, I did not want to like completely show every detail of what, she experienced in order to come to this place.
Yeah. So. Well, and it's interesting because I have gotten several questions that are like, but what is the backstory of the villain that causes them to behave this way? And I think that's a whole school of thought of writing. And some people do it so well and it's great. But to me, I think my experience of life is that sometimes people are really awful and your goal is to survive them or get away from them or whatever. But I'm not necessarily as interested in the humanizing story of the antagonist. I think some people love it and that's their bread and butter. But for me, I'm less interested in the story of, what drove that guy to be abusive to his spouse. I don't need to know,
especially with abuse, and especially when you are writing a book where this is about the women characters in this. It really is. I will say there is one theme in my books is that I always write stories where women are coming together to help each other. That's generally one of my themes. So I just really like, to a degree, I will aim for fleshing out flawed characters. Geez, I hope Elizabeth Lark, because these women are very flawed. I mean, they're not 100%
likable. You don't have the heroic main character who's just, all sweetness and light.
she didn't have it all together. None of them did. But I'm just saying, like, they're really flawed people, and a lot of people are like, well, they're not likable, but I don't need to write likable people. I just can't write something that is completely and totally repulsive to the point where it's not on a level of forgivable to me, I guess.
It's interesting. My favorite character in my first book was the male character. He was great, but his great characters are, he was loving, he was attentive. This is the uncle of the, so my protagonist is a 6-year-old girl, and the character I'm referring to is her uncle. So they have a avuncular relationship, but you know, he's patient, he listens well, he's thoughtful, like great traits in a character. I was thrilled to write him. I did not write a lot about the character who has the darker backstory, you know, exactly what drove him to that. I wasn't as interested in that idea, I guess.
Funny is I try to write these male characters who are actually, like, the ones that I really focus on are actually probably nicer than a lot of the men that I actually hear about. Like, I think
like Herb, it's fantasy for a reason.
I know Herb is a gentle man in the book. I mean, he's kind of like, you know, he's stuck, but he's gentle.
I would love to write more characters like that and hold that up more and have them be celebrated for being the lovely cinnamon rolls that they are.
Yeah, right.
So it looks like we've got another question in the chat.
Oh yeah, please. Sorry, I didn't see questions, so I kept going.
Sarah is asking, at what point, Melissa, did you decide to write thriller/mystery?
That's interesting.
Good question, Sarah.
Good question, Sarah. That's thought-provoking. No, actually, you know, at first, well, I have a BFA, so I started out writing literary fiction, and I actually have stories that are, you know, published, and I won a scholarship and an award and stuff for those. But I did find that I have this tendency towards creepiness, so there always was somebody, you know, dying or getting killed by something, and I decided, well, I was finally told, you know, we need a little more plot, you know, to get these kinds of stories to work. Now, granted, I do kind of sit there on the edge. I mean, there's definitely a thriller aspect, but there's kind of an edgy, like, women's family drama kind of thing with that.
Yeah, what do they call it? Domestic suspense, psychological suspense.
Yeah, and some people have actually said, you know, this is kind of, you know, character-driven mystery or psychological look at a family versus a psychological thriller where, you know, you have like Gone Girl or Girl in a Train or something.
Crime is very central, though. The central crime does drive the whole story.
Good, yeah. I mean, I was aiming for that.
So I don't have a copy of the book with me because, like I said, I listened to it. But I was going to see if maybe people could see this from the camera. I kind of wanted to ask
all my copies are upstairs.
About the
Melissa, you'll never show up to an event without your own copy in your hand.
Right.
Literally,
I used to put it on the shelf behind me.
I have 15 copies of this book, but they're in my office space upstairs, so you wouldn't want me to run up there.
It's a beautiful cover, though, if that was your point, Julie. Isn't it an amazing cover?
I wanted to kind of ask because I am a big fan of mystery books, always have been. I started reading them far too young. A lot of like the standard for what you would consider like a thriller/mystery can tend to be a darker cover, right? It can tend to be a landscape from far away, some sort of like just ominous. And
right,
so,
and it's kind of not.
Right.
It's cheerful. I love it.
Once I started listening to it, I was like, well, this cover is so misleading in the nicest way.
Oh, no, I don't think so. Look at the creepy reflection in the sunglasses.
Yeah.
I did, you know, I thought that, and actually my editor said maybe we should put darker lipstick on her because she would, but honestly, and there were people who were like, the cover's glamorous, but the book is not. They're in, you know, snow and rain, but at the same time.
I see LA. I could see like a LA implication of that cover that's not what the book is trying to do. Yeah.
It's a little more gritty. But then somebody was actually telling me it doesn't really matter if the book 100% matches. It's more just like it has to be kind of eye popping and match it like a little bit. It doesn't necessarily match her though. But in a way, the cover kind of reminded me, and this is why I was like, cool with it, especially because it's so pretty. It reminds me a little bit of like Thelma and Louise, that kind
Yeah,
of.
me too. That's where I think of it too. Yeah.
So
I
she
love
is on
it.
the run.
And
And I actually reached out because everybody loves that cover. Like I'm always hearing, I picked up your book because of the cover.
because of the cover. Yeah.
I hope you like the book too. But I actually reached out to her because I didn't even know who she was until, I got my hardcovers and I looked inside and found out who designed it. And I actually sent her a message on Instagram and she was really happy that I had liked it. In fact, yeah, but I also went to her website and she had a few outtake like photos, or not photos, but versions that she was thinking of. And a couple of them were a little even more Marilyn Monroe-ish than this one. So it was just really interesting. Her website is interesting and she's done a lot of covers. So I was looking
It is fascinating. For people who are not involved in the publishing cover world, the author does not pick the cover. I assume your experience was the same as mine, Melissa. They ask a few like big picture themes, or they say like describe the main character and give me some visual themes of the book or whatever. And then the publisher just comes back with this like finished product and they're like, here you go, and you can push back a little, like you could say, it's a little too bright. Could you make it dimmer if you wanted? And they would probably do that. But really, as an author, as I said, the lowest of the low rank in publishing, you really could not, you would have an uphill climb to say, like, I hate that cover, take it back and redo it. Like the publishers invested the money. They've all decided this is the cover that they think will market the book correctly. It's a marketing piece. So you, the writer, are, the last sign off. But I love your cover, and I do think
they're like you get the last sign off, but not really. I mean,
yeah, you get the last, meaning everybody else has already approved it. So do you really want to mess that up, Eliza? I don't think so.
My agent is so cool, and she's also really interested in everything being, just so. And she's like, she mentioned, she goes, it looks like she put her lipstick on in the dark. Can you fix the and my editor was like, oh my gosh, you're right. So they go and they fix her lipstick. I mean, that was all we really asked for.
Yeah, you could do touches around the edge. Yeah. But
I think where I was kind of trying to go to is the point of the book is not like the down and dirty, gritty, like what you're saying. So the fact, and now that you think about it, and I was working at the store yesterday, so it was up on our new release table. And of course, if you really look at it, you're like, oh, okay, well, we hide behind sunglasses, and especially maybe on the coast because the sun's never out. And then, there's the reflection in it. And it's just very like, there is more going on that cover than when you first looked at it. But it just really, like, once I saw the physical book yesterday on the table, I was just like, oh man, this is so. And your point you were saying earlier about you've always wanted to see like a book that you wrote on the shelf. I love that. It's actually why I went into publishing, is that I decided I didn't want to be the writer. I wanted to be like helping with other things regarding books. But I still think it's just so, like, when you're a little kid and you're just like, what if I got one of those books on a shelf? Someone knew my name. I think it's so lovely. Yeah.
Well, and
that's
Melissa,
really the best part. We just try to focus on that and not, the new stressors that arrive with being a published author,
Yeah.
That's really the best you can do, because all you can control is your writing and trying to get better with the next thing. And you can't, if you're really focused too much on stuff you can't control,
Yeah, we were talking about the difference between self-publishing and traditional publishing before. And I think one of the things in traditional publishing is you have to be able to let go. You have to, I didn't pick the title of my book. I didn't pick the cover. I think they're great, but like, you're really joining a team. And if you're not willing to go with the team and defer to the team's expertise, then I'm not sure traditional publishing is the route to go. You know, if you want to have it the exact way you want it, I think that's more of the self-publishing route where you design your own cover, you are in control of everything. But I really appreciate the insights of people who understand these things really well. And book marketing is a complicated world. I don't think it's that intuitive all the time in terms of what covers sell and what, you know, how readers pick books, how readers decide what they want to look at, you know. So I'm grateful for anybody who wants to contribute to my stuff.
Yeah, me too. And it's a little bit easier of a road once you do actually figure out the way that readers are going to respond and how you're going to manage things in terms of even just being in bookstores and stuff. It's a lot harder if you try to go that route. It's kind of uphill battle.
People do it and they're amazing at it. I just know for myself, I don't think I have the wherewithal to figure that all out for myself. People do, but I'm just glad to have anyone help me.
Yeah, honestly. I did get to keep my own title though.
Your title? Well, your title's pretty intrinsic. I'd be surprised if it wasn't what you had to start with. Did you have other titles, or was this pretty much always what you had?
Well, I always start my projects with, and their title is like new thing.
Yeah, right. Mine's always the setting. It's like the Maryland one.
I eventually came up with this one, and
I love it.
They kept it. I don't know.
Yeah. So it sounds like you are maybe working on another book, so we can hopefully, you know, see that in the near future. What would be really awesome is when this COVID thing is over, that you could come to Bend and you know, come meet us in person. That would be amazing. I miss in-store events a lot, but I have to say that Zoom has opened up some things for us for people who cannot make it to Bend. I mean, this time of year, the snow can come at any point. So I really appreciate that both of you have made the time to, you know, do this Zoom thing and just open up your world to our world.
And I really love that friends of mine who don't, you know, because there's one bookstore here and they're great, and I'm going to do an event with them in Idaho that I could really do an event with unless I wanted to go travel places. And I'm really, really grateful that, you know, people here right now that, you know, some I know, and you, Eliza, like we would not be able to really do this.
That's right. I'm in DC, so it'd be very difficult for us to get together in the same, like it could happen, but you know, we don't make that much money. So it'd be very difficult for us to be flying all over.
New York, and I'm going to hang out with you guys over there because there's so many people over there.
Yeah, there's at least on the East Coast a kind of a cluster, but it's still not that easy to just jump over to a bookstore in New York or anything. Yeah, hopefully when the pandemic ends, there will be a little more, but there's going to be a lot of things that I've learned through the pandemic that I'm going to keep. You know, I think I would definitely do a virtual launch party for my next event. I don't think I would do another in-person one because you could have a rainy day or, you know, a bad metro in DC and lose half your attendees for a in-person party. I think having an online one is perfect and reaches more people in a lot of ways.
Yeah. I've really enjoyed that, to be honest. I haven't, you know, and I've also had a lot of other kind of meeting up with, like we've done it with our debut group, and I've done a couple of I've done some book clubs that I was able to do.
Yes, it's fun, right? Yeah, when a book club meets, they can just have you Zoom in. So it's just like you and 12 lovely ladies from Annapolis on a Sunday morning, just chatting, you know? That would be a big ask to go to in person, to drive out there and sit with them for an hour. But on Zoom, it's easy. And when they want to talk about you behind your back, you just sign off and then they've got 20 minutes.
Yeah. I've got one in Seattle, and actually, like, it's going to be so fun. I mean, I started reading some of their other books and like joined them because it's really fun, and so it's just awesome, like being able to do a book club anywhere.
Yeah. Well, that is a good point, I think, to remind everyone that Roundabout Books has events and book clubs every week. So check out our event calendar. We have some really wonderful events coming up. I hope that if you liked this event, you'll join us for some other ones, obviously free. We can ship a book to anywhere in the country if you want to give us a call and order from us. website, etc. But again, I just want to thank everyone who's on here listening to these lovely authors. I want to thank both of you for being here, and just everyone who has continued to support any independent bookstore in your area, because indies and Indie Bookstore Day is coming up in April. We need to keep indie bookstores, to keep neighborhoods getting books, to keep, you know, kids having a place to go in and read. And while those other people will still be around, and that's fine, I just appreciate everyone for supporting your local neighborhood bookstore. It's very important.
Yeah, it is. And so there's also, you know, Indie Bound or a bookshop. They are donating a portion to indie stores. We just really need to keep them open, because this pandemic has created a situation where people can't just walk in and pick up a book and buy it, because a lot of times that's what we do. I mean, honestly, I think, you know, if my book could be, you know, seen more, people might be interested in it.
I know for us smaller authors, you know,
Yeah.
it's the local stores that make the difference. So we're happy to
Really.
be a part of anything that they're doing.
Yeah,
Definitely.
absolutely. Well, awesome. Thank you so much. And keep us posted, both of you, about new books coming out. You know, feel free to email me. And oh, wait, Bridget, are you hand up or clapping? Sometimes I can never. Okay, it's all. Yes, and I think
Yay!
one of our local guild members. So thank you for being here.
Also, if you do choose to order, and I'm sure that Eliza can do this too, if you choose to order from Roundabout, call me Elizabeth Lark. I'll send you a signed book plate, so you can, you know, stick it on your book or whatever. That way we just kind of, you know.
Yeah, usually we would have some signed books available, but this weird
We don't.
circumstance, the one disadvantage, it becomes a lot harder, you know, to get that done. Sorry about that, everybody.
Yeah, come into the store and get your books, and yeah, you can get a book plate. We actually made some with the Roundabout logo so that we can have people come in and sign them.
Oh, nice.
For other things too for books. So yeah, excellent. I love signed books.
All right.
I think that about wraps up our event. So again, thank you everybody. Have a great rest of your evening. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you at the bookstore.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.